In this interview, things get intense fast. Watch as Nigeria's foreign minister responds to allegations about violence and crisis in Nigeria and claims circulating online about a so-called ongoing genocide. But the moment that's now going viral happens when Canadian MPP Goldie Ghamari challenges him directly. She accuses the Nigerian government of failing to protect its people and calls his statements misleading, even going as far as calling his defense of the situation shameful. This is one of the most heated exchanges to hit Piers Morgan's show recently. Let's break it down.
I was a politician for 7 years, Piers, and I can tell when someone is lying and avoiding the truth. That's exactly what this foreign minister is doing, and shame on him for lying.
If the Nigerian government continues to allow the killing of Christians, the USA will immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria. If they don't, there's going to be hell to pay.
Right now, you have an Islamist government in Nigeria. There is a reason that we're seeing these Islamic militants going around and yelling Allahu Akbar. That's not by coincidence.
It's easy for her to sit thousands of miles away and play games with people's lives.
Just this weekend, government abducted 25 girls from a high school in Nigeria. Boko Haram is being blamed. Understandably, I wanted to find out more about all of this. I expected the Nigerian government to be addressing the situation with urgency and invited the Nigerian Foreign Minister, Yusuf Tuggar, to appear on the show. There was a bit of a bad line, but I'm sure that you and many in the White House will find what followed pretty extraordinary. Well, joining me now is the Nigerian Foreign Minister, Ambassador Yusuf Tuggar. Welcome to you, Foreign Minister. I appreciate you joining Uncensored.
Thank you for having me, Piers.
So, a simple question. If somewhere between 50 and 100,000 Christians have been murdered in Nigeria since 2009, depending on which bit of data you want to take up, and 18,000 Christian churches have been destroyed, why isn't it, as some people are claiming, a genocide against Christians in Nigeria?
Well, to begin with, those figures are completely and totally inaccurate and false. And many in the media have examined them, they've fact-checked them. So they come from Inter-Society and Open Doors, and they've been shown to be totally inaccurate. What we have in Nigeria is a multi-ethnic, multi-tribal, multi-religious country of 230 million people. Our nation-building project is not an easy one. We have
This is the part many people are furious about. He completely rejects the reported numbers, even though the stories coming from affected families paint a very different picture. So when he says the numbers aren't accurate and denies any form of genocide, it feels like he's ignoring the lived experiences of the people who are actually suffering. That disconnect is why so many viewers believe he isn't being fully transparent here.
Suffered from the effects of things that we have no control over, exogenous factors such as the breaking up of the Libyan state, the killing of Gaddafi, the proliferation of weapons and fighters that have cascaded down to the northern fringes of Nigeria and beyond, and have affected the entire region. The failure of the EU Sahel strategy over the years. These are all things that we are suffering the effects of.
All right, let's stop here for a second. Now, the foreign minister shifts the blame to the Libya conflict, saying the weapons came into Nigeria because of the collapse of Gaddafi's regime. But here's the problem, and this is what a lot of Nigerians are asking online. How did those weapons actually cross the border and move freely across the country? Yes, Libya's war created instability, but weapons don't magically walk themselves into Nigeria. People want to know who transported them, who funded the groups using them, and how did they move through multiple states without being intercepted? These are the questions many Nigerians feel the government keeps avoiding. So when he tries to attribute everything to Libya, it sounds to a lot of viewers like an easy explanation that doesn't address the real internal issues.
We do have Boko Haram in the Lake Chad region that affects not just Nigeria, but 3 other countries, Niger, Chad, and Cameroon. That we've been contending with through the multinational joint task force that allows the troops of the countries in the region to pursue the terrorists. 50,000 insurgents and people that were caught in the region of the insurgency having surrendered, and we were in the course of processing them, and some were being rehabilitated, others were being processed through the legal system when Niger had to pull out because of the failure of the EU Sahel strategy and the military coup that was experienced in Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali.
Look, you've made it clear that you believe these numbers are wildly exaggerated. The International Society for Civil Liberties and Rule of Law is a non-governmental organisation that monitors and tracks human rights abuses across Nigeria. In its report in August, it said jihadist groups, including Boko Haram and ISIS in Nigeria, had killed over 100,000 Christians in the last 16 years. It also noted that 60,000 moderate Muslims have been killed in that period too. Now, I guess my obvious question to you is, if it's not 100,000, then how many Christians have been murdered since 2009? And if it's not 18,000 Christian churches that have been destroyed, how many is it?
Let's pause here again. Piers Morgan is now repeating the same question he asked at the beginning. Over 100,000 Christians killed in 16 years, more than 60,000 in just the last decade. And notice what happens. Instead of addressing the numbers directly, the foreign minister circles around the issue again. This is exactly what frustrates so many viewers. The question is clear, the statistics are clear, but the response doesn't actually engage with the core point. People watching this interview feel like he's dodging the reality rather than confronting it.
We in Nigeria have Christians, we have Muslims, we have atheists, we have animists, and when we're counting death tolls, we don't necessarily go by religion, and quite often it's difficult to even identify what religion an individual that has just lost their lives belongs to. And what we are concerned about is that they are Nigerians first and foremost. And we've seen these sort of agitations by faith-based organizations that is a prelude to the breaking up, to the dismemberment of countries. We've seen it in Sudan. We know this playbook. It's happened. There were agitations to create South Sudan, which was expected to be a predominantly Christian country, separate from North Sudan, which is meant to be a Muslim country. Now we have a situation where there's fighting, continuous fighting in South Sudan. There's another round about to kick off. The same thing in the North Sudan.
Okay, but let me interrupt.
Muslim fighting each other. So we don't want to be the next Sudan. We will not allow ourselves to be the next Sudan.
No, I understand that.
Where are the faith-based groups that were agitating for Sudan to be dismembered? They're no longer there to fix Sudan.
Okay.
Not North, not South.
Okay.
It's Nigeria as a member of the Peace Council of the African
Let me jump in if I may.
With the heavy lifting.
Foreign Minister, if I may, I'd like to jump in if I may, because you do seem to be avoiding my questions. You know, you don't seem to know how many Christians have been murdered, which I find surprising.
I'm not.
Well, you haven't given me any. You've told me you don't know. Well, with respect, sir, you have not given.
The Nigerians. So
no, I know what you said.
They're not necessarily
I understand.
Same as those that.
But you are, yes. But what you're saying, if you could let me speak, what you're saying is that you dispute the numbers of Christians that have been reported to have been killed, but you have no idea how many Christians have been killed. What we surely can agree on is how many Christian churches have been destroyed. Do you know how many?
Yes, I do. For the last 2 years, there have been 52.
Hold on. 50-something churches? That's the number he's going with? That doesn't even come close to the scale of destruction that has been documented across multiple states for years. Entire communities have been wiped out, entire districts burned, and he reduces all of that to 50-something. This isn't just an underestimate. It's an insult to the people who watch their churches get attacked, destroyed, or turned into rubble. Saying 50-something erases the reality of what has actually happened on the ground. If that's the official line, then the government clearly isn't being honest about the level of devastation.
52 churches, depending on which region, again, you are referring to, because there are different regions in Nigeria, and there are, I can give you the figures right here now. So,
well, how many since 2009?
Since 2009, since the last 5 years, attacks, not destroyed, attacks on churches, 102. So we're not hiding any figures, you see. It's important to understand this. Same way that there are mosques that are destroyed. I don't even have to mention that. Nigeria is configured in such a way that you have Muslim and Christian populations all across the country. There are, of course, states out of the 36 states that we have that have a high concentration of Christians, the same way that there are states where you have a high concentration of Muslims. Take, for example, the more recent attacks that have brought about an intensifying of this false narrative that there's some persecution or as the likes of Bill Maher even go as far as to say, a genocide. The ground
well,
zero
it's actually
for that
more than
would
Bill
be
Maher.
Benue State.
If I may jump in again, if I may play you.
Of Benue State,
No, I understand.
but
If I may jump in, sorry.
No, if I can just finish this, sorry. The governor of Benue State happens to be a man of the cloth. He's a reverend father. He's a Catholic. So you can see how it is impossible for him to be concealing what is happening. He would be screaming at the top of his voice if indeed there was some genocide or if there was some specific calculated targeting of Muslims, of Christians. But he knows there isn't.
Hold on. This part is infuriating. He's seriously using the Benue State governor as proof that nothing is happening? That is beyond insulting. Let's talk about who he's talking about. This isn't some fearless advocate for the people. This is a politician who stood by in silence while communities were being wiped out. A politician who bent over backwards to please the ruling party. And let's remember the most shocking moment. Over 200 people massacred in Yelwata. Families destroyed, children murdered, entire villages shattered. And on that very day, instead of mourning with his people, instead of demanding accountability, instead of showing even a shred of leadership, he lined up school children in the rain to greet the president. Children, in the rain, while 200 bodies were still warm in the ground, and the president didn't even go to the massacre site. Not even for 5 minutes. So to sit here and claim that this governor, this same man, would be screaming at the top of his voice if a genocide were happening. It's laughable, it's offensive, and it destroys the credibility of the entire argument. If the government has to rely on someone like him as their proof that everything is fine, then everything is not fine.
Stay there for a moment, if you will, because joining me now is the former Canadian.
All right, pause right here, because this is where everything changes. Goldie Ghamari just entered the conversation, and the entire tone of the interview shifts instantly. Up until now, the foreign minister has been dodging, deflecting, and sugarcoating every single question. But the moment Goldie joins, the excuses stop working. She comes in with facts, with names, with first-hand accounts, and with zero patience for political gymnastics. You can literally feel the tension spike. His body language tightens, his voice starts to crack. That calm diplomatic mask starts slipping. Because she isn't here to play polite politics. She isn't here to protect anyone's ego. She's here to call things out directly. And the foreign minister is absolutely not ready for that energy. This is the turning point of the interview. This is where his talking points collapse under pressure. And this is where the conversation finally gets real. Because Goldie doesn't let him hide behind scripted lines, numbers, or excuses anymore.
MP Goldie Ghamari, host of The Goldie Show, who has spoken out frequently at what she says is a genocide against Christians in Nigeria. Goldie Ghamari, welcome to Uncensored. What is your response to the Foreign Minister of Nigeria, who says there is no genocide, the numbers of those who've been killed, number of churches attacked, has been wildly exaggerated?
Well, first of all, Piers, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. Piers, if it walks like a duck and it talks like a dog, it probably is a duck. There is a reason that we're seeing these Islamic militants going around and yelling Allahu Akbar. That's not by coincidence. There's a reason that they are attacking Christians on Christmas Eve. Let's not forget that back in 2014, almost 300 Christian schoolgirls were kidnapped by these Islamic militants. 80 of them, their whereabouts are still unknown. Piers, what's happening in Nigeria is jihad. It's the exact same thing that happened on October 7 by Islamists when they broke into Israel and murdered Jews yelling Allahu Akbar. It's the exact same thing that ISIS terrorists did to the Yazidis in Iraq. It's the exact same thing that happened in Lebanon. Here's the only difference between what's happening today in Nigeria versus what happened 1400 years ago when the Muslim Arab invaders came to Persia is that back then people did not have cameras, but today they do. It is 100% jihad. We've seen it before. This is how the Islamist playbook always happens.
Well, I don't think that the foreign minister was denying that bad things have been happening. He's just denying that it constitutes a genocide and that the numbers of reported
because his
deaths
government is a part of it.
Of murders of Christians.
I think his government is complicit. Right now, you have an Islamist government in Nigeria. One of the things that he didn't mention to you is that typically it's been a constitutional convention in Nigeria that if the prime minister is Muslim, then if the president is Muslim, then the vice president is Christian. If the president is Christian, then the vice president is Muslim. This is intended to have a proper representation of Nigerian population. Right now, you have a Muslim president, and then they decided to choose a Muslim vice president, and so there is actually no Christian representation in the Islamist government. By the way, this is a government that is working closely behind the scenes with the Islamic Republic of Iran. You should ask the foreign minister why Nigerian school children are holding pictures of the Ayatollah, who is a brutal dictator and is murdering my people in Iran. People need to look into the linkages between the current Nigerian government and the Islamic Republic of Iran. I was a politician for 7 years, Piers, and I can tell when someone is lying and avoiding the truth. That's exactly what this foreign minister is doing, and shame on him for lying.
Foreign Minister, your response to that?
With all due respect to the lady, I'm sorry, I forget her name. She has already exposed her ignorance and lack of knowledge about Nigeria, and it's easy for her to sit thousands of miles away and play games with people's lives. These are real
I'm not the
lives
one playing games with people's lives. 7,000 Christians have been murdered in Nigeria. 7,000 Christians have been murdered in Nigeria. Who's playing games with people's lives?
Does not even know whether Nigeria has a president or a prime minister. You can see how she's waffling, she's stumbling. But this...
Pause. This part right here exposes everything you need to know about the foreign minister's priorities. Goldie makes a tiny slip. She says, Prime Minister of Nigeria, immediately corrects herself and moves on. It's not even a mistake. It's a human moment. But what does he do? He grabs onto that tiny slip like it's the only lifeline he has left. Instead of addressing the massacres, the attacks, the destroyed communities, instead of dealing with the actual accusations in front of him, he clings to a harmless correction as if that somehow erases the entire conversation. And, honestly, that desperation is embarrassing. That's not leadership. That's not confidence. That's someone who has run out of answers and needs a distraction, any distraction, to avoid dealing with the truth. The fact that a 1-second correction is the strongest point he could come up with shows exactly how empty his arguments are. It's shameful. This is supposed to be a top government official, yet the only thing he can confidently challenge is a tiny verbal slip? It tells you everything.
This is typical of...
I think you're showing your own ignorance. The fact that you're not able to actually counter what I'm saying, and instead you're going after these things that are irrelevant, that just shows how ignorant you are.
Saber rattling, trade in saber rattling, it is typical. You can see she's exposing herself. She doesn't even know the country that she's trying to start a crusade on, and drawing comparisons with Gaza. You know, it's clear what she's trying to do. We have a constitution that has... Go and read my constitution before you even try to have a discussion with me. Look up sections 10, 38, and 42 of our constitution. There is federal character enshrined in our constitution. It's part and parcel of it. And the priority is the region where you come from, because we don't identify ourselves as Muslims and Christians in Nigeria. We identify ourselves from regions, geopolitical regions.
Christians disagree.
Place where we come from.
But do you accept? All right, Foreign Minister. Foreign Minister, let me jump in. Let me jump in. Foreign Minister. Foreign Minister. Do you? Foreign Minister, if I may. Foreign Minister, if I may. Foreign Minister, do you accept that there is a big problem? You know, we can quibble over precise numbers, but you've already said by your own numbers, over 100 Christian churches have been attacked. You won't commit to how many Christians have been killed. I think you're slightly hiding behind the fact you don't know what all their religion was. But you must know how many people have been killed.
I can give you figures. You did not ask me. I can give you figures of those that lost their lives
How many Christians have been murdered in Nigeria since 2009?
Since over the last 5 years, I can categorically tell you that 177 have been killed. And it does not mean that the killing...
But you said to me... You said to me earlier you did... Yeah, but hang on. Foreign Minister, with respect...
They are not necessarily Muslims.
Foreign Minister...
To understand that.
Foreign Minister, with respect, earlier when I asked you that question, you said you didn't know the number because many of the people who've been killed, you didn't know what religion they were. So which is it?
Yes, so I am telling you, number killed when churches were attacked. I told you the number of the churches that were attacked.
No, how many Christians? You misunderstood my question. How many? I want to know. Yes, but Foreign Minister, you have had United States senators like Ted Cruz saying publicly that at least 50,000 Christians have been murdered since 2009. If you're saying that number is wildly exaggerated, what is the number?
I keep giving you the numbers, but clearly, you are not...
You're not. You're giving me the numbers since in the last 5 years.
Accept the numbers or to even listen to what I'm saying. 102, 177, number injured 98, number abducted 7, Okay, so we
Stop right here. This is unbelievable. Piers Morgan asks him the exact same question he opened the interview with, and for the second time, he still can't give a straight answer. 2 chances, 2 failures. But suddenly, when the pressure gets too much, when Goldie is exposing the gaps, when the entire conversation is collapsing on his excuses, he magically pulls a number out of nowhere. Since 2009, only 177 people have been killed. Only 177? Only? The arrogance, the insult, the sheer mediocrity of that statement is staggering. Communities have been wiped out, thousands displaced, uncountable families shattered. And he reduces all of that to a neat little 177, like he's reading off a grocery list. And notice something else. The moment he senses the conversation slipping away from him, he starts talking over everyone, cutting off Goldie, cutting off Piers, interrupting every sentence. Every time someone tries to hold him accountable, he bulldozes the conversation with noise, as if volume can replace truth. This is classic deflection. When you don't have real answers, you interrupt. When you can't defend your statements, you raise your voice. When you're exposed, you drown everyone else out. This right here is one of the most embarrassing displays of government incompetence on international television.
We are not hiding any facts. But as I said, we don't go about trying to identify a Nigerian's faith when they've lost their lives. That is
but
not,
do you
that
condemn?
Is not what Nigeria
do you condemn? Foreign minister, do you condemn? Do you condemn the attacks and the murder on Christians by Islamist groups in Nigeria?
Absolutely, 100%. I lost my father-in-law to an attack by an Islamic terrorist group, Boko Haram. So I myself, I'm a victim. I've lost family members to attacks. And they were Muslims, but it doesn't matter whether they're Muslim or Christian, because their aim is to kill, to maim, so that they would achieve their objectives. And the number one enemy of Boko Haram is not a Christian. It is a Muslim who does not subscribe to their own brand of Islam.
Okay, I mean, Goldie Ghamari, let me bring you back in there. I mean, there's no doubt that tens of thousands of moderate Muslims have also been murdered by Islamists. We can argue, you know, till the cows come home, frankly, about what the exact numbers are. But clearly, a lot of Christian churches have been attacked. So have a lot of mosques, where it is believed that the people who are, observing their faith there are too moderate for the Islamists. So it seems like the Islamist groups like Boko Haram, like ISIS, are targeting pretty much anybody that they don't agree with, be that moderate Muslims or Christians. Is this not, as the foreign minister is putting forward, a case of it's not just Christians being targeted and persecuted, it's also moderate Muslims, and that there's a general wider problem with Islamist terrorism?
Well, there is definitely a problem with Islamist terrorism, but just because Muslims are being murdered, it does not negate the fact that there is a targeted ethnic cleansing of Christian Nigerians. One does not negate the other. What we can conclude from this is that there is definitely an Islamist problem. Now, one thing that the Nigerian minister is purposely forgetting to put out there is that it's not just Boko Haram, it's also the Fulani militants. Not a lot of people know about the Fulani militants. The Fulani Islamists are also the ones who are generally targeting the Christian Nigerians, especially in the Plateau Belt. And I've had several Nigerian Christians come on and speak about this. In fact, I have seen videos where you have the Fulani militants, on their motorcycles with machetes. They're driving through various towns, and you have the Nigerian military who's supposed to prevent them from going. They're getting orders to stand down and allow the Fulani militants to go through. Again, Piers, the loss of life is horrible. But as you can tell from the minister, he's avoiding questions. He's avoiding eye contact. Instead of actually answering the questions, he's focusing more on trying to attack me and trying to, go after me because I'm not as familiar with the Constitution. I don't need to be familiar with the Constitution of Nigeria to understand that, over 50,000 Christians have been murdered since 2009. I don't have to be familiar with the Constitution of Nigeria to know that when someone yells Allahu Akbar before they massacre 200 Christians and burn Christian churches, that's not just banditry, that's jihad. And I think the reason that the foreign minister does not want to admit this is because they are somehow complicit in this. And, he he is purposely saying that he is willfully ignorant. Because how could the Nigerian government not know if those people who have been murdered are Christian or Muslim? The reason that he's avoiding saying that is because if they actually put out formal numbers about the numbers of Christians targeted and murdered, then they will have to admit that there was a genocide. They don't want to admit that there's a genocide, but that's exactly what's happening, and I'm glad President Trump and others are calling it out.
Foreign Minister, finally, your response to that.
Well, like I said, the lady and people like her trade in starting wars in faraway places where they have no contacts, they have no understanding of, and they can do that from their armchairs from a safe distance. It's a real life situation. This lady would not know the difference between a Fulani man, a Tiv man, an Igbo man if they stood in front of her. But you can see clearly overnight, because it pays, she's probably making money out of it.
Actually, I'm getting $0 for this. I'm getting paid zero. I'm getting paid zero for this. I have been speaking out against human rights violations. Listen, Piers, as you can tell, he's not able to actually answer anything that I'm saying. All he does is just attack me and attack my credibility. So I think this shows the viewers exactly where the Nigerian government is.
She's going to keep on insisting that she has not heard the figures. So that's what she's trying to do, start a war. They want to break up Nigeria the same way they broke up Sudan, and now they've run away. She's not talking about Sudan anymore. She's not talking about South Sudan.
I actually have talked about Sudan in other episodes as well.
For Sudan to be dismembered. This is what they do. This is what they do. What they try to do to Africa. Nigeria is the largest country on the African continent. It is the largest shock absorber to the African continent in terms of admitting migrants, in terms of freedom of religion. It's Africa's largest democracy. But people like you, who don't really care about the freedoms of either Christians or Muslims or Africans, will continue to agitate for the breakup of Nigeria, for war, the same way that it's happening in South Sudan, and you've kept mum because you've moved on.
The reason that I know that you are working with the Islamic Republic of Iran is because the Islamic Republic puts out the same narrative about balkanization. That balkanization narrative is something that the Islamists constantly use.
That Africans are losing their lives. To you, it's just another black country to be broken up. You don't care who dies.
Your hands are the one that's covered in blood, not mine.
But we've seen you.
Not mine. I'm not denying the Christian genocide, but you are.
It's not going to happen to Nigeria.
Shame on you.
Move on to your next project. Move on to your next, your disgrace. Your disgrace to the Canadian nation. I'm shocked that you say that you actually practice as a politician in Canada. Move on to the next episode. Leave us alone.
Well, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you both very much indeed for joining me.
After dodging every question, after downplaying thousands of deaths, after fumbling numbers, interrupting everyone, and embarrassing himself on live international television, his grand conclusion, his final defense, is to accuse Goldie of starting wars in faraway places and call her a disgrace to Canada? That's the best he could come up with? Name-calling and paranoia? Instead of addressing terrorism? Instead of acknowledging the thousands of Nigerians living in fear, instead of owning the government's failure to protect its people, he starts ranting about foreigners wanting Nigeria to break like Sudan. This is the level of debate coming from the Nigerian government? This is the standard? A country facing constant attacks, massacres, kidnappings, and entire villages burned to the ground. And the priority is to blame outsiders and insult anyone who dares speak up. It's unbelievable. Nigeria is under siege from terrorism, and rather than take responsibility or present real solutions, he turns the conversation into a petty, emotional outburst. This isn't leadership. This is deflection, insecurity, and desperation wrapped in a diplomatic suit. If this interview proved anything, it's that the biggest threat to national security isn't foreigners. It's the government's refusal to face the truth. And that brings us to the end of this explosive interview. If you watched all the way through, you saw exactly how the conversation unraveled. The deflections, the contradictions, the interruptions, and finally, the outright insults. Here on Opinion Tree, we don't sanitize anything. We break it down as it is, raw, real, and unfiltered. If you found value in this analysis, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because trust me, this conversation isn't ending here. We have a lot more to unpack, expose, and discuss. This is Opinion Tree, where the truth gets louder and the excuses get burned down. I'll see you in the next one.